Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be debunking the two differences between support tickets and work requests. There has been a lot of questions around what the two differences are, and if you're using tickets for client tasks or thinking twice about what exactly is the best method, we're going to kind of talk through it. So if you are not familiar with what work requests are, I would first want you to go over to work requests. Come in here for the first time, you'll actually see this pop up on this left side, and then you'll have the ability to click on the lifesaver and understand and learn more about work requests. You can alternatively go over to the help.suitedash.com website and learn more about work requests. But a work request is a document, and it says a document, but it's really not a document. It's more like a support ticket that can be submitted for the request of work. There is a few different ways that you can do this. You can do it through the itemization of specific items. So like if you had selective items that you wanted to have your clients select from, you can do it that way. Or you have a free form option where they can essentially type in what their request is, and based on that detail, you can convert it into an actual invoice, estimate, project. And so we're going to talk through the differences between this and the support section down here. I will say the biggest difference is that with support tickets do not have an automated kind of narration. It doesn't connect with the other spaces or modules inside of the actual system, meaning this is its standalone module. You are When a ticket is submitted, you then have the ability to convert that ticket into a live, a tracking process, but there is no automation that pretty much converts into a task or anything like that at this moment. This is probably the easier part to start on doing support tickets. Um, and I guess we can talk through support tickets first. With support tickets, there are the spaces that you can see here on the left side. This is the menu space. You can see all of the requests that are formulated, any of them being unassigned. If they are assigned to you, you can see yours. If you have any assigned specific to a person on a team, you can see that. You have the everything box, which is essentially seeing all of these in this combined space. Priorities, which really doesn't really play a big part in anything. Statuses as well. You can add statuses and priorities. You can also create inboxes that would help with dividing and conquering for different types of roles. And then you have the ability as well to add statuses and tags. On the right side over here, you have the settings module, which is the generalized settings. You can set a default mailbox. You can connect a email address to this. You can auto BCC people to this. You can default set the priority status. You can also default the email and the auto reply. On the other hand, you can set permissions to be where certain team members can view support tickets and roles can view support tickets. You can also specify if you want it from a role to just be a staff member or team. So if you have a support tickets team, you can assign them individually, or you can select everyone and include every staff member. Same thing with, well, staff member and team separately, and then you have some advanced settings where you can assign a certain person to do certain replies, or even being able to assign a ticket itself or delete tickets. So you can have the permission settings, which is very important, established here. You also have the ability to manage all of the inboxes. If you do not create inboxes, everything just goes into the everything box. Creating an inbox means that you're specifically going to focus on if it's like finance or funny how, you know, I'm over here not spelling stuff correctly, but it could be finance, it could be admin. You can segregate it that way. And then you have the priority name that you can create as well with, associated with a color. And then there are set statuses. As you can see with statuses, you have the ability to delete these, but not the default. You can add a status as well, and tags, which is going to help for filtering. And then the save replies, which you can use to um, pretty much just save time with the whole process. That's the overall place of it. When adding support tickets, you can create support tickets on the behalf of someone, and you can change the email responses. So I'm going to just create a test. You can see that they can do attachments as well. And with attachments, it's pretty much like a space where you can have them upload any type of file and then submit it. Once they submit based on your settings, you have the ability to pretty much just have that like default of once it's submitted, you get an alert, they get an alert to say that that you've received it. There is a default form that's created with support tickets that pretty much kind of set the tone. You can create custom support ticket forms within the system, which is pretty cool. And it could be based on your drop down or any kind of like different space that you have here. And what I mean by that is that if I go back, I can go over to forms and then I can create an actual support ticket form. And this can be used as the default form. Currently, the one that they pre-create is this one here. And you can, again, staff submit from this level. And you can just customize the default form if you wanted to. Like I said, you can, once you submit it, it processes. And then once it processes, which I don't even know why this is taking so long to process, to be honest. And that could be my internet connection. But once it does process, you would see the overall submission of it. And then from there, you can set the default. Let me go back into this so you can see the edit. You can set the default parameters around the overall, like, are they set as a lead? What are their role? What is their coordinator? What are the default tags? Are you assigning it to a specific inbox or things like that? And so the biggest thing is just making sure that you have the full dynamics of that support ticket set up. You can email the coordinator according to submission. You can send out a default email. You can also, from here, do some advanced blocks, which is like a choice block, which essentially you can dynamically set up based on a choice the same setting. So it pretty much functions as a full space. And then you can set this as a default for the staff submit. So on behalf of, you can set it for them, and then you can set it as a default for the CRM targets. And then you still have the same logic for the side as well, where you can adjust the link, you can adjust the title, the reference name, the embedding. If you want to embed it on your website, things like that, you can adjust it that way as well. But again, it's all inside of this space. So when you're creating a ticket and it's submitted, let's try this back one more time. I don't know why it doesn't want to submit. But once it is submitted, the full round of the ticket, I'm going to see if, let's do it from this angle. I'm going to do it from over here. And I'll do it from an incognito screen. So this would be kind of like the path of a person coming in to submit a ticket. And then once they submit that ticket, It essentially would, and I really don't know why it's not submitting. It could be a me thing, but we're not going to sit here and hold the space for it because I'm in a dummy account. Um, so within the support ticket, it's pretty much just that. Okay, so it did submit this time. And so once it's submitted, you can see that it goes into both the all and the unassigned. And once it does go into that space, you have the ability to see the audit trail. Now, this audit trail is going to be pretty baseline. So it's going to, you have the ability to reply. You can reply and assign it to a person. You can assign it to the actual client or yourself or anyone. You can prioritize it. You can set it as active, or you can add that reply. But the client is able to actually see all the responses. You can assign the actual ticket to someone, and it's pretty just standard. Like, I mean, for the most part, you have the tags, you have the inboxes, and I can move it to the inbox that I want to move it to. And then the status of it, I can close it out, and then the trail of that as well. The conversation is pretty much here. It doesn't really do much outside of this. And again, this is the stance. Like once it's closed, you can see it in the closed space. Let me refresh. Um, okay, we want to be rude. But once it's closed, you should see it in the closed space. And I'm showing you again in real time all of the things. I don't know why it disappeared now. But once it's closed, you would normally see it. There we go. In the closed space, you would see all of the trail. And then if you click it back open, you can activate it again. So you can change the status at any time. I think there's just a slight delay with it moving along the spaces. That's what's happening. So I'm sure that if I refresh and give it a couple of seconds, I'll probably see it again in the active space because it wasn't closed, but it looks like it takes a second. And it's probably just, again, my internet speed. But you can see all the activity. You can copy the URL for the ticket itself. But that's pretty much it. The dynamic of support tickets is pretty laid straightforward. The only other thing I would notate is that you have then, like, that's communities. You have then the abilities just to assign, unassign, update, unupdate, all the things. Let's go to now work requests. With work requests, there's a different dynamic because it is connected internally inside the system. And so work requests are going to be more intuitive. The first thing I want to do is show you what a work request without any edits are. So you have the ability to have the person have a subject. You can assign, obviously, that. You can do it from a staff submit side as well. You also have the ability to have them add a description if they needed to. The other thing that happens here is that you can have custom fields that are able to be answered here as like a form base. It goes underneath the requested due date. And what that means is that I can go over to the content settings and I can add a custom field specifically for work requests. And so I can say this is a single field or a multi-line. I can use all the types and I can mark it required. And that would be essentially the place that I'm able to set it up. And once I do set that up, then it goes underneath that work request option. Wrong spot. So it will go directly in the work request and it will go underneath this section here. You cannot create different headers or more customization here, unfortunately. It's really just a place for you to simply just have a question asked and then they respond to it. They can upload attachments. They can also either, you can force them to mandatorily have an attachment, or you can say no, it's not required, and they can just add if they need to. And then the items list here is going to be specific to adding items for selection. And so the way that you can set that up, I'm going to show you as well. Okay, so going over to projects and then going into settings, you're going to have two specific menu items for work requests. So you have the work request setup. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the settings per se so you can understand what this means. So you have the general work request settings that disables it fully for the client so that they won't be able to submit any. You have their ability for them to select from different projects. And the reason why this is something I want to bring up is because work requests can again be tied to a task or a project. And so specifically to the projects, which anytime a project, anytime it's converted to a project, it then creates a task. And so you can allow them to select from existing projects. I would only recommend this if you are doing it in a scale of where you have predestined uh, assignees. Like you'd say, like you have a financial department and you have a project specifically for financial task. And so if you want them to select that type of existing project, you can let them do that. You can allow the clients to attach documents. And again, this is where you can make it mandatory. And then once you've converted an actual request, you can have the ability to change the status to close. And it's either if you convert it to a project or an estimate or invoice. And you essentially have the ability to just see the open versus closed status. So I'm going to put project here so that you can see what I mean. The other thing is that you can actually set a task status when it is converted to a task. Most times I just put it to open unless there's something specific. The itemization here, you want to default it to a gateway. I don't have any gateways connected. And then you want to be able to as well either force the payment immediately once the order is in, or you can essentially, it's once it's converted, you can have them pay, or you have the free form. And when you do the free form, you have to choose either the ability to remove the actual request items altogether, or allow them to be created but not required. And so I always make sure that I'm removing it altogether. If you do have this itemized, you want to make sure you preset the items. And so presetting the items are going to be set up here, and I'll show you that in a second. And then the other thing about this is the notifications, where you're notified either the client's coordinator, the admins, and the coordinator, or you don't get any notification at all. And then over here, the items that you can set are going to be based on the specific dynamics. So you can name it a certain name, you can add a description and a price. What you want to notate is that this is essentially outside of the item space of the system. So it's not connected to the invoicing office items. It's a separate work request items space. And then when you do the itemization here, it will tie to a gateway. So if I were to go over to work request again, and I have an item, I would essentially have the ability to select from the item. They have the ability to select quantity of that item. And this will be useful if like you are in any type of service-based place, or if you want to do ad requests or whatever the case is, it would set up there. I like simplification. So with work requests, I do, for the sake of my business model and the business models that I've worked with, I convert it to a project, and when it's closed, I mark that project task as open. I do have a free form, and I remove the ability to do the work request items, and I hit save, and that saves these dynamics here, and we're going to do a test work request here. So what this means is now I have the ability to not have to put the item, but this would be based on the subject. So I'll do test, and then I'll do the person. I could do a description here as well. I can do a requested due date, and then I can also add an item for attachment if I wanted to. Here is the caveat that I always say with people that it kind of is something for you to note. One, when you submit, when that request is submitted as an admin or the coordinator, you would get that notification. It doesn't convert to anything by itself. It is not a space where you can automate and say, hey, go ahead and convert this to a project or blah, blah, blah. It doesn't do that. You can edit the request, but the request editing is really based on your knowledge, or for some reason you want to add something to it, or you want to change a description or whatever, you can do that. I don't know why you would do that, but you can. The other options are you could just simply view it. You can view the items and you can add messages to this item. You can also see the attachments separately from the entire request, and you can copy the actual integration UID. You can convert it, you can archive it, you can delete it. A lot of people ask me, what does the client see? They see what you see. They see the submission, they see their request, they can edit. That is basically what they see. Now, converting is the next step of this process that Support Tickets does not have. And with conversions, you have a couple of different options. You can convert it to a new invoice, an existing invoice. Like, so if I had an existing invoice tied to this said person, I can actually create an estimate. I can add it to an existing estimate. Again, it's pre-selection based on if it's already existing. I can create a project utilizing a task template, or I can add it to an existing project tied to that person already as well. So because I have this set up to where the status would be marked as closed if I move it to a project, I'm going to do new project. I do not have any task templates. With a task template being set up, that means that once I convert this over to, and I'll do it so you can see. So if I go to templates, and I'll just create a test template. If I had set tasks that I want to do, so for example, review, and I'll just make this simple. We'll do it to the project coordinator and just add. So if I were to go back and go to the work request again, and I go to options and convert, and I'm going to do new project because I don't have any created projects for this person. When I convert this, the thing that I don't see as useful is that it's pulling in the actual request itself. So this is the test request, but it's also pulling in the actual task template task that I had. So it's pulling in that request plus the actual information that I already had for the task. And so when I do that, it doesn't really give me any kind of like satisfaction, but it could be beneficial. Um, I what I would have liked, I don't even know. I think it makes the most sense for the logic, but what it does also do is it creates a project now with the name of the task. So if I go to projects, it's going to have that name of that project or that task request here. And when I go into it, it has that task template that I have plus the request. The other thing that I want to notate is that if I did have attachments on that task, it does not do a good job of adding the task files to the actual um, task itself, which I think it should, right? Because it came through, but it's going to go into the files and then it's going to go into public files. So it saves the file itself inside of the actual files tied to the project. And it also will save it inside of files itself as well. So if I go over to that contact and I look at the person and I go over to submitted by and I go to work request, I can see the file here, but then I also can see the file in the projects. Load for me faster, will ya? Okay. Doesn't want to load for me fast. Okay. I'm not trying to waste time today. So it doesn't want to load for me fast, but I can see it in the project. And then I think that's like one of the things that I wish that they would do better, which is adding the file specifically on the actual task. So I don't have to now go here, go to public files, and then see the same item that they uploaded here. I would have liked for it to been on the task itself. Not a biggie. Let's say that someone comes in though and they submit another work request. So essentially, this was that first request that was submitted by the target. You can see that because I converted it to a project, it's marked as closed. I'm going to go ahead and submit another one for said person. And I'm going to also add another file. And again, I'm going to submit it. So again, you can see that it was open. They would get a notification. I can view it. I can see the things. I can comment. But then ultimately the goal is to convert. So once I convert, now that I have an existing project for this person, I can then select that project and it does the same thing where it pulls it now in as a task. And again, it doesn't add the file directly to the task. It goes into files and then it goes directly into public files and I can see both. The beauty is that I can download both files in one space. I can also do all the adjustments I want to the actual project itself. Like I can change the settings of this project. I can update the actual project itself. Like I can change it to say, working task. I can change the status of it. You can add team members to this. You can add secondary contacts. You can definitely update the project accordingly, which is a great thing to do. And so you can see now inside of my projects, the actual project name that I just updated to, the working task. You can see these items. And of course, you can see the assignee who's going to be involved in it. And I can even, again, make adjustments to this task and make different selections and things like that. It's all very intuitive. It works well. Now, if they were to do an invoice, I'll show you that as well, because this has a little bit more of the ability for you to do adjustments. Like I can convert this now to a new invoice if I wanted to. And you can see that it takes the title of the actual work request itself. It doesn't add any items, so I would have to add the item. I can adjust the invoice. I can adjust all the things. I can do all of that at that level of me converting it. And I'm going to go back to projects and work requests. But at this point, because I converted it only to an invoice, it doesn't close it. And so that's the another issue that I think like you don't have like the close option with the conversion. You have that either or. So it's either you're going to come into the setup and say, hey, if I make it a project, it's closed. If I make it an invoice, it's closed. I think this is because they want you to have an end result. Like, is it going to be a task that you complete or is it going to be an invoice that you're invoicing for? And I think it's like set to that work model, which I don't think it's really fair, but you can only choose one. So that's the downfall of this. So if I were to convert this, and I can convert it to existing invoice if I had one. I didn't save the other one, or I can convert it to an existing or to a new estimate, and then which will convert to an invoice if I have that set up. So let's show you what that looks like. So I'm going to convert it to an estimate. I can go ahead and again do all the things. I can mark it as open, and then once I convert it, it'll get sent to the client, all the things. And then again, with anything that I do, like if I wanted to, let's say that I wanted to actually, add information onto this, I could, like an actual comment here, I could, to kind of keep the status rolling of what the audit trail is, I could. For updates, the client could also respond. And again, they see what you see. So they see the actual same visuals of basically what I'm seeing here. And then ultimately, if I go now and say, okay, well, I'm going to add this to the existing working task that I have, this is where it again gets added to that task list. Going back over to projects, going over to work requests, you can see that it's marked as closed. So the key difference is that this is tied to projects versus a support ticket is tied to its own module. The other biggest thing that I want to notate here is that within a project, we do know that you can add automations to an actual task. And so if you were to go ahead and want to, when the task is completed, then do your next steps, you could. I think what might be helpful is for you to create an auto template. Like if you are a person who's like, okay, well, once I complete this, I want a set dynamic to be completed. You can set that up, but you can only do a task template the first go around of creating the actual project. And once this is completed, then like once you've already now established that this is a project, it doesn't allow you to have the secondary space of saying this is now going to be able to have another task template. And so like if you were working on this and you want to have like a conclusion, I would have an auto template that I would create, and you can create it from here. So I can go ahead and create the automation. I would add this and I'll say like I want to send to the client to say completed. And then when this is done, I would actually save and create as a template. So I would say this is going to be like my completed template, and then hit save again. And so once that configuration has been set up, you can see, okay, this is now going to be the automation. And once I mark this complete, it would send out that email to that person. And then if I want to do that for every task, instead of me having to now, oh, let me go ahead and add, that same thing, I can just choose from that completed task. It automatically adds that entry. I can hit save, and then that actual task, like the automation is going to be set up there. Once I mark it complete, it's going to trigger that next step. If you did not know, you can actually see all the emails that go through to that person in a couple of different ways. You can see it in the activity stream, and you can go over to email, and then you can see the items that are sent out. Mine are in queued because it didn't get sent, but you can actually see all the things. The other place that you can see it is directly in that client's card. So if I were to go over to the CRM contacts, clients, I can see all of the emails that were sent in that email log, or even just the logs here. So I can see them receiving everything. That's pretty much it. I hope this was very thorough and helpful. The design of this all is just to help you understand what the best practices are. I would suggest if you are being more task driven, it would be a work request that you use. If you want more of a ticket kind of like space, you can use support tickets, and that should still also work. The two are very, very functional. One of them is just a little bit easier to navigate than the other. As a reminder, if you don't know who I am, my name is Marie. That is me. If you go over to SuiteDash and you click SuiteDash specifically, you can see how we support others in doing these setups and these informational spaces. We have workflow tune-ups, which essentially is going to require a pre-assessment to establish if your workflow is eligible. And what that means is if you have like an onboarding process that you just want to fine tune with some automations, we can help with that. If you want to do a full onboarding build out, meaning that you want to take a client from the intake all the way over to the flow of them having that initial, steps of onboarding, this is where we are right now. And then the complete build out itself, depending on your structure, will start here. And if you're not too sure, you can always schedule a demo. We do have a pre-assessment with every session before we go forward, because we need to make sure that you are fully equipped. And if you have not noticed, we have now finalized our two options for the tax workflow that we've been working very heavily on, either a portal based tax workflow, which is portal pages. And so the portal pages are going to be very specific on one of the workflows that you've seen me do, like in an hour plus video, where essentially they go through stage by stage, or you do through the project generator, which a lot of people are moving towards. We do also, just do training if it's something that you want to just take the time to learn SuiteDash. A done with you process is going to be us training and doing a workflow together on the call. And then the hour training is just going to simply be us just going through an hour of the system itself, understanding what SuiteDash is. I'm in love with SuiteDash. I definitely want you guys to know that me knowing the owner, Mike, has been very much so a beautiful, beautiful experience over the years getting to know him. He's faith-based just like me, and I love SuiteDash. So I'm going to be making a ton of different videos and all the things, but if you need support, we do offer as well hourly support for SuiteDash. So if you're more interested in learning how to just do basic things like setting up dashboards or even like different aspects of the business within SuiteDash, feel free to reach out. I'm looking forward to chatting with you, and thank you so much for watching this video.